Wade Harrison stared at the blinking cursor on his laptop screen, the job application form mocking him with its emptiness. 27 applications sent out this month, and not even a courtesy rejection email to show for it. His studio apartment smelled of 2-day-old takeout, and the refrigerator hummed an off-key melody that matched his mood perfectly. Just one more, he muttered, taking a swig from his lukewarm coffee. The mug, emblazoned with "World's Most Average Software Developer," felt particularly fitting today. The microwave beeped, announcing that his sad excuse for dinner, leftover noodles, was ready. As he stood to retrieve it, a notification popped up on his screen: "Congratulations. You've been selected for an exclusive opportunity." Wade snorted. "Yeah, right. What Nigerian prince needs my help now?" But curiosity got the better of him, and he clicked the notification. The screen filled with pulsing colors and elaborate graphics, advertising something called "The Ultimate Opportunity," in font so flashy it hurt his eyes. At the bottom of the screen, a button blinked: "Accept your destiny." "This is ridiculous," Wade said to his empty apartment. "But hey, at least it's not another form rejection." He clicked the button, expecting to be redirected to some scam survey. Instead, the room filled with blinding light. When Wade's vision cleared, he found himself standing on a platform made of what looked like liquid crystal, surrounded by thousands of beings that defied description. Some floated in midair, others had multiple limbs arranged in geometrically impossible configurations, and a few appeared to be made entirely of light. "Ladies, gentlemen, and sentient collectives of the 12 galaxies," boomed a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Welcome to our final contestant selection for Heart of the Stars." A holographic figure materialized in front of Wade, a being whose form constantly shifted between humanoid and something far more abstract, covered in what looked like digital glitter. "I'm your host, Prism," the figure announced, their voice echoing through what Wade now realized was an enormous arena. "And you," they pointed directly at Wade, "are our final contestant." Wade looked down at himself. He was still wearing his faded t-shirt and sweatpants. "There's been a mistake," he said. "I was just looking for a job. I clicked an ad." Prism's laugh sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Oh, Earthling. The cosmic algorithm doesn't make mistakes. You signed the quantum contract." "The what now?" Wade asked, feeling increasingly sure this wasn't a hallucination. "The terms and conditions." Prism's form sparkled with amusement. "You didn't read them, did you?" "Nobody ever does." A holographic screen appeared, showing Wade clicking "Accept your destiny" just minutes ago, followed by microscopic text scrolling faster than any human could possibly read. "But what is this? Where am I?" Wade asked, trying to remain calm despite the impossibility of his situation. "You're on Station Lumina, broadcasting live to 17 quadrillion viewers," Prism announced. "You've been selected to compete for the hand of Princess Naera of the Celestial Dominion." As if on cue, another hologram appeared, a woman with skin that seemed to contain constellations, hair that floated like cosmic dust, and eyes that held the depth of galaxies. Despite her alien features, she was undeniably beautiful in a way that transcended species. "Marriage?" Wade choked. "I didn't sign up for." "The prize," Prism continued, ignoring Wade's protest, "is marriage to the princess and ascension to the celestial throne. The consequence of failure." Prism's form briefly morphed into something with too many teeth, is quantum dispersion. "That sounds painful," Wade managed. "Only briefly," Prism assured him cheerfully. "Now, let's meet your competition." 3 figures rose from the floor on platforms similar to Wade's. "Our first contender, Admiral Drex of the Vortex Armada." A massive being covered in iridescent scales and wearing what appeared to be living armor stepped forward. Multiple metal-like objects adorned its chest, and its eyes glowed with tactical intelligence. "I shall claim the princess as my strategic alliance partner," Admiral Drex announced, voice rumbling like distant thunder. Next, the incomparable Duke Zephyr of the Nebula Realms. A being composed of swirling violet mist coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape, adorned with what looked like jewelry made from miniature stars. My lineage spans 12 cosmic cycles, the misty Duke proclaimed. The princess shall be my most valuable acquisition. And finally, the undefeated champion of 3-star systems, Titanium Magnus. A chrome-plated humanoid stepped forward, its perfectly sculpted features reflecting the arena's lights. It flexed, causing several audience members to swoon. My victory is 99.8% assured, the android announced. The remaining 0.2% accounts for unexpected cosmic phenomena. Wade looked at his competition, then down at his coffee-stained t-shirt. So, when can I go home? Home. Prism's laugh echoed throughout the arena. Oh, dear Earthling, you misunderstand. There is no home until the competition concludes. The quantum contract binds you to completion, or elimination. The crowd roared with excitement, and Wade noticed Princess Nayara watching from a distant box seat. Even from afar, he could sense her calculating gaze. The first challenge begins in 1 rotation. Prism announced. Contestants, prepare yourselves for the gravity gauntlet. Before Wade could protest further, his platform descended, carrying him to a chamber beneath the arena. The walls were transparent, showing stars and nebulae beyond, definitely not Earth's sky. This can't be happening, Wade muttered, placing his coffee mug on a floating table that adjusted to his height. I must have fallen asleep at my computer. I assure you, Earthling, this is quite real, came a melodic voice from behind him. Wade turned to find Princess Nayara standing in his chamber, though he hadn't heard any door open. Up close, her skin really did contain what looked like miniature galaxies, shifting and swirling beneath the surface. Your Highness, Wade stammered, suddenly aware of how ridiculous he must look. I think there's been a mistake. There are no mistakes in the celestial algorithm, she replied, circling him with predatory grace. Though you are unexpected. That's what my last performance review said too, Wade quipped nervously. To his surprise, Nayara laughed, a sound like crystal bells. Interesting. The others are plotting strategy or practicing combat moves. You're making jokes. It's a human defense mechanism, Wade explained. When faced with impossible situations, we either laugh or scream. Laughing seems more dignified. Nayara's eyes narrowed. The competition is not a joke, Wade Harrison. The games are real, the dangers are real, and the consequences of failure. Let me guess, also real? Quite. She moved closer, studying him like a scientist might examine a curious specimen. Tell me, did you truly not know what you were agreeing to? Wade sighed. Princess, on Earth, nobody reads terms and conditions. We just click, accept and hope we haven't signed away our firstborn child. And now you've signed away much more, she observed. Are all humans so careless? Not careless, Wade countered. Just overwhelmed. Our world bombards us with so much fine print that eventually we stop looking for the traps. Something flickered in Nayara's expression, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. The elite will not be pleased, she murmured, almost to herself. The elite? The rulers of the celestial dominion, she explained. This competition is their way of maintaining control. Before Wade could ask what she meant, Nayara moved toward the wall, which rippled like water to let her pass. Wait! Wade called. Any tips for surviving this gravity gauntlet thing? Nayara paused, half embedded in the wall. Don't try to control chaos, Wade Harrison. Learn to dance with it instead. With that cryptic advice, she vanished, leaving Wade alone with his coffee mug and the sinking feeling that he'd stumbled into something far bigger than a marriage competition. Outside his chamber, he could hear the crowd chanting what sounded like chaos or perhaps change, the syllables blending together in alien tongues. Wade looked out at the stars, wondering how far he was from Earth and whether his application for that data entry position had been automatically rejected yet. Well, he said to his reflection in the transparent wall, at least this beats filling out more job applications. Somewhere in the distance, countdown clocks began ticking, marking the moments until the first challenge. In the reflection, Wade thought he saw something moving among the stars, watching, calculating, perhaps even hoping. Dance with chaos, he repeated Nyera's words, noticing how the liquid in his coffee mug seemed to shift in impossible patterns, defying the laws of physics he understood. He had 27 unanswered job applications, an overdue electric bill, and now, apparently, a date with destiny in an interstellar reality show. Tuesday had taken an unexpected turn. The transmission came without warning, a cascade of quantum signatures that erupted across Ezra's carefully calibrated monitoring systems. At first, he thought it was another system glitch, something he'd grown accustomed to during years of pushing technological boundaries. But this was different. Holographic displays flickered with impossible data streams, mathematical sequences that seemed to breathe and pulse with an intelligence far beyond standard computational algorithms. Zara Luminera watched from the dimensional threshold, her crystalline form shimmering between states of solid and energy. She had been tracking this human, this Ezra Holloway, for cycles beyond human comprehension. The celestial nexus had strict protocols about interdimensional engagement, but something about this particular quantum researcher defied all standard classification. Ezra's fingers moved instinctively, capturing the exotic data patterns. Each mathematical sequence was like a living language, carrying information that transcended traditional communication. Quantum entanglement was no longer just a theory, it was becoming a bridge between realities. Impossible, Ezra whispered, watching as probability matrices began to form complex geometric shapes on his screens. The data wasn't just information, it was alive. The first genuine contact happened accidentally. A miscalculated quantum resonance frequency created a momentary window between dimensions. For precisely 2.7 seconds, Ezra and Zara made visual contact. Her form was unlike anything human eyes could fully comprehend. Imagine light-given consciousness, crystalline structures that moved with purpose and intelligence. Where human bodies were defined by rigid boundaries, Zara existed in a state of perpetual transformation. Their eyes met, his wide with scientific wonder, hers deep with millennia of interdimensional knowledge. In that fractional moment, something fundamental shifted in the universe's probability matrix. The celestial nexus had specific protocols for these rare interactions. Zara was a diplomatic envoy, tasked with identifying potential interdimensional collaborators. Humans were considered volatile, unpredictable, qualities that made them both dangerous and fascinating. Ezra's quantum communication array began to pulse with an rhythmic pattern. It wasn't a random signal, it was a message, encoded in the language of probability itself. Mathematical sequences that spoke of potential, of connection, of something far beyond simple communication. "Who are you?" Ezra spoke aloud, knowing the chances of a response were mathematically improbable. The response came not in words, but in a cascade of quantum probabilities that restructured themselves into a complex geometric pattern. It was an invitation, a challenge, and a potential pathway between realities. The celestial nexus had been searching for someone like Ezra for centuries, a human capable of perceiving the intricate dance of quantum possibilities. Most researchers saw data. Ezra saw living information, dynamic systems that breathed and evolved. Zara's supervisors would not approve of direct engagement. The protocols were clear: observe, analyze, but never directly interact. Yet something about Ezra challenged every established rule. As the quantum transmission continued, Ezra realized he was no longer just a researcher. He had become a potential bridge between humanity and realities beyond comprehension. The quantum communication was more than a scientific breakthrough, it was the beginning of something unprecedented. Little did he know, the celestial nexus was watching. And they had very specific plans for this unexpected human who saw the universe not as a collection of static elements, but as a dynamic, living system of infinite potential. The celestial nexus had protocols for everything, except for Ezra Holloway. Dimensional protocols dictated that first contact should be measured, calculated, and predictably controlled. But Ezra's quantum resonance defied every established rule. Zara found herself in an unprecedented position: fascination. Her first official test came as a quantum challenge. A transmission appeared in Ezra's lab, materializing as a complex geometric puzzle that would destroy most computational systems. To the celestial nexus, it was a standard compatibility assessment. To Ezra, it was the most beautiful mathematical challenge he'd ever encountered. The puzzle wasn't just about solving an equation. It was about understanding the very fabric of interdimensional communication. Each solved layer revealed another level of complexity, like an infinite Russian nesting doll of mathematical possibilities. Ezra worked for 3 consecutive days, surviving on synthetic coffee in pure scientific determination. His workspace transformed into a labyrinth of holographic projections, quantum algorithms dancing around him like luminescent spirits. Clothing became optional, thought became currency, and reality blurred at the edges. Zara watched, her crystalline form shifting between observation points. The Nexus supervisors grew increasingly agitated. "He's not following standard response protocols," one complained, their voice a resonant frequency rather than a traditional sound. "Precisely," Zara responded, her attention never wavering from Ezra's increasingly erratic but brilliantly intuitive problem-solving approach. On the 3rd day, Ezra didn't just solve the puzzle. He reimagined it. Where the celestial nexus expected a linear solution, Ezra created a multidimensional response that folded mathematical potential into itself. He didn't just answer the challenge, he expanded its very definition. The lab erupted in a cascade of quantum energy. Holographic projections exploded into fractal patterns, mathematical sequences that breathed with living intelligence. For a moment, the boundary between Ezra's physical space and the interdimensional realm became startlingly thin. Zara materialized fully for the first time. She wasn't humanoid, nor was she entirely alien. Imagine light given consciousness, mathematical potential given form. Her body was a constantly shifting constellation of crystalline structures, each movement a complex equation of potential and probability. Fascinating, she communicated, not through sound, but through a direct quantum impression that translated perfectly in Ezra's mind. Ezra, exhausted and slightly delirious, looked up. Most humans would have been terrified. He was merely curious. "I'm guessing this isn't a standard research grant," he mumbled, running a hand through his increasingly wild hair. The celestial nexus had specific rules about interdimensional romantic potential. Compatibility wasn't about physical attraction, but about quantum resonance. And by every measurable standard, Ezra and Zara were creating a mathematical symphony that defied all established protocols. Their courtship would not be conventional. It would be a dance of mathematical potential, of interdimensional possibility. Each interaction was a challenge, each moment a complex equation of connection and discovery. The universe watched, and for the first time in millennia, something truly unexpected was about to unfold. The celestial nexus never anticipated a full-scale quantum rebellion. But Ezra Holloway was not a typical human, and Zara was definitely not a conventional interdimensional diplomat. Their connection had become something far more dangerous than a simple interdimensional encounter. It was a quantum entanglement that threatened the very fabric of established cosmic protocols. The Probability Control Council convened in a realm between dimensions, their crystalline forms pulsing with agitation. Centuries of carefully maintained cosmic balance were unraveling, and at the center of this chaos stood 2 unlikely revolutionaries. "He's corrupting the system," one council member observed, their voice a resonant frequency that vibrated through multiple dimensional planes. "Humans are not supposed to perceive the quantum layers this way." Zara's response was a complex mathematical sequence that translated to defiance. She had long been the perfect diplomatic agent, following every established rule. But Ezra had changed something fundamental about her perception of reality. Back in the New Seattle lab, Ezra was no longer just working with quantum computers. He was becoming something more, a bridge between human potential and cosmic possibility. His latest breakthrough was a quantum communication network that could potentially bypass dimensional restrictions. Each algorithm he created was a rebellion against predetermined cosmic systems. Where most scientists saw limitations, Ezra saw infinite potential. The challenges began subtly. Dimensional barriers started to fluctuate around his research facility. Equipment would mysteriously recalibrate. Holographic projections would reveal glimpses of realities that should not exist. Zara's supervisors issued their first direct warning. A quantum transmission that was part mathematical equation, part cosmic threat. Disengage or face complete dimensional isolation. Ezra's response was to laugh. "You're trying to control the uncontrollable," he muttered, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that pulsed with living energy. The rebellion wasn't just about scientific discovery. It was about challenging the very concept of predetermined reality. The celestial nexus operated on a system of strict probabilistic control, every potential outcome calculated and managed. Ezra and Zara represented something terrifyingly new, pure, uncontrolled potential. Their connection transcended traditional understanding. When they communicated, it wasn't through language or even traditional quantum signals. It was a direct exchange of probabilistic potential, a conversation that existed simultaneously across multiple potential realities. The Probability Control Council watched in growing alarm. Their most sophisticated predictive algorithms were failing. Ezra and Zara were generating potential outcomes that defied all established mathematical models. "He's not just breaking the rules," one council member observed. "He's rewriting the entire concept of rules." Zara's response was a quantum pulse of what could only be described as excitement. For the first time in her existence, she was experiencing something beyond calculated diplomatic engagement. She was experiencing discovery. The lab became a nexus of impossible events. Quantum fluctuations created momentary windows into alternate realities. Equipment that should have been impossible began to function. Mathematical equations began to breathe with a life of their own. Ezra was no longer just a researcher. He was becoming a living quantum event, a human capable of perceiving and manipulating the very fabric of dimensional reality. The rebellion had begun. And the celestial nexus was about to discover that the most dangerous force in the universe was not technology, not alien intelligence, but pure, uncontrolled human potential. The final confrontation was not a battle of weapons, but a war of possibilities. Ezra stood at the epicenter of a quantum storm that threatened to unravel the entire cosmic infrastructure of the celestial nexus. His lab had transformed into something beyond a research facility. It was now a living conduit between dimensions, a breach in the carefully maintained walls of reality. The Probability Control Council made their final move. A concentrated dimensional compression designed to isolate and neutralize the quantum anomaly that was Ezra Holloway. But they had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of their opponent. Zara materialized fully, her crystalline form no longer constrained by the rigid protocols of her civilization. She was no longer just an observer or a diplomat. She had become something entirely new, a bridge between worlds, between possibilities. Their coming, she communicated directly into Ezra's consciousness, a quantum whisper that carried the weight of multiple potential realities. The attack began as a mathematical siege. Probability vectors converged, creating a dimensional pressure that would have crushed any normal human consciousness. Algorithms designed to predict and control began to swarm around the lab, a living network of computational destruction. Ezra didn't fight. He understood. His response was not resistance, but transformation. Every algorithm the celestial nexus launched, he absorbed. Every predictive model they used to contain him, he expanded. The quantum communication network he had been building was not just a communication system, it was a living, breathing dimensional translator. "You can't control possibility," Ezra whispered, his voice resonating across multiple dimensional frequencies. The lab became a crucible of impossible events. Quantum fluctuations created windows into realities that should not exist. Mathematical equations began to breathe with a life of their own. The boundaries between what was possible and impossible began to dissolve. Zara's role was crucial. She was no longer just supporting Ezra, they had become a singular quantum event. Two consciousnesses intertwined at the most fundamental level of reality, creating something that defied all existing cosmic understanding. The Probability Control Council watched in horror as their most sophisticated systems began to unravel. Their entire civilization was built on the ability to predict and control. And here was a human, assisted by an interdimensional being who had gone rogue, dismantling everything they believed about reality. In the final moment, Ezra didn't defeat the celestial nexus. He transformed it. The quantum storm reached its peak. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath. And then, a breakthrough. The dimensional barriers didn't just break. They evolved. Ezra and Zara emerged not as conquerors, but as architects of a new understanding. They had shown that the universe was not a system to be controlled, but a living, breathing network of infinite potential. The celestial nexus would never be the same. As the quantum storm settled, Ezra looked at Zara, no longer just a researcher and a diplomat, but something far more profound. They had become something new, something that existed between the lines of reality itself. "Well," Ezra said, a smile playing across his exhausted features, "I don't think this is going to look good on my research grant application." Zara's response was a quantum pulse of pure, unbridled joy. The universe had just changed forever.